Hey there, welcome. In today's lesson, we're going to be looking at how to get a high score in academic task 1. Now, for this lesson, we're going to be using this. It's an academic task 1 question, and the graphic is a table, which is very common in IELTS writing. So the rubric says, the table below shows the population in millions of 8 countries in 2008 and 2018. It also shows the percentage growth in population between these two dates. And as always, the rubric would say, summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Now, regardless of which graphic you get in task 1, the first thing you want to do is to spend 2 to 4 minutes analyzing the graphic. So what you would do is take out your pen or your pencil and to start making notes on the question paper. And we're going to do that now so you can see. So we've got 8 countries: Angola, Brazil, Canada, Japan, Nigeria, Pakistan, Romania, and Russia. We have the population in 2008, the population in 2018, and then the percentage growth. So if we look at Angola, we can see that the population increased between 2008 and 2018. So on the question paper, just draw a little upwards arrow. Then look at Brazil, and we can see that it also increased. Likewise with Canada. Now in Japan, the population decreased between 2008 and 2018. In Nigeria, it increased. In Pakistan, it increased. In Romania, it decreased. And in Russia, it stayed the same. So we can see that 0% change between 2008 and 2018. So now we know the general trend of all of the countries. Let's focus on some specifics. So what you would want to do when you're analyzing the graphic is to look for extremes. So the largest growth or the smallest population. So if we look at 2008, we can see that the largest population was Brazil and the smallest population was Romania. If we look at 2018, the largest population had changed to Pakistan, but the smallest population was still Romania. And again, these are circles that you should be writing on the question paper. Remember, it's totally fine for you to make notes on the question paper before you start writing. And then if we look at percentage growth, we can see that the largest growth was in Angola, and the smallest growth, or rather the country that shrunk the most in population, was Romania. Okay, so now we've made some notes on the question paper. Another good idea is to write 2 things, and that is overview and order. And this is going to help us to determine what we're going to write in our overview and how we're going to structure our answer for this question. So let's think about what we're going to include in our overview. So remember, our overview is a general statement of all of the categories. In this case, all of the countries. So I would write 5 countries increased, 1 country stayed the same, and 2 countries decreased. So now I've got a good idea of what I'm going to write in my overview. Now this would also affect the order that I write my answer in. So typically in task 1, you start with your introduction, then you have your overview, and then what we identified in our overview will shape our body paragraphs. So in this case, because we have 5 countries that increased, I would have the first body paragraph as the countries that increased. And I would also have a second body paragraph with the other countries. So the other countries being the countries that didn't increase, namely Japan and Romania, which decreased, and Russia, that stayed the same. You could also, for example, have another body paragraph just about Russia, because that country stays the same. Okay, so this is the first thing that you should do when you see the question paper. And I advise you to spend 2 to 4 minutes doing this before you start writing. And it's very important that you learn how to do this effectively and efficiently, because you don't have long to write your answer. Remember, you typically only have 20 minutes for task 1. Okay, so now that we've spent 2 to 4 minutes analyzing the graphic, the next thing that we're going to do is to write our introduction. Now, an introduction does not have to be complicated. The idea is that you only spend 1 to 3 minutes, ideally 1 minute, writing your introduction, and it only has to be 1 or 2 sentences. So let's have a look at an example. When it comes to writing the introduction, you take the rubric and you're going to use synonyms or change the grammar of the rubric. So here is a bit of a cheat sheet for you. We have the graphic type, verb, and then description. So for example, in the rubric it says, the table below shows. Now, we could use this cheat sheet and say the table gives a comparison of. So the idea is you have your graphic type, verb, and then your description. So here is an example of our introduction. The table presents information on the population growth of different countries between 2008 and 2018. That's it. Very, very simple. And that's what you need to do, because you don't have long to write your answers for academic task 1. You just want a 1 or 2 sentence introduction and to move on to your overview and body paragraphs. Okay, the next thing that you would write is your overview, and we're going to have a look at how to write that now. So we've got our graphic with all of the notes on it, and we said that for the overview we identified that 5 countries increase, 1 country stays the same, and 2 countries decrease. So let's have a look at a model overview answer for this question. Overall, 5 countries experienced an increase in population growth: Angola, Brazil, Canada, Nigeria, and Pakistan. 1 country, Russia, did not change, and 2 countries saw a reduction in their population figures: Romania and Japan. Okay, so this is a very good overview, and it's likely to get us a very high score in IELTS writing. It gives a general description of all of the categories. However, we could improve this overview, especially if we're looking for Band 8 or Band 9. We could say, it is noteworthy that the most considerable growth was in Angola and the most significant decline was in Romania. So we're saying that we've looked at all of the categories and we've given their general description, and we've also identified these features. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do to get a very high score in academic task 1 is to make comparisons of the data. So to do that, we use certain sentence structures, and I'm going to give you some examples that we've taken from our Band 9 model answer. Here we go. Of the 5 countries that experienced population growth, the largest increase was seen in Angola. So this is an advanced sentence structure that you can use in your answers. And the reason it's so good is because it compares Angola to the rest of the countries. Now remember, one of the things that you need to do to get a high score in task 1 is to make comparisons of the data. And that's what this sentence does. Of the 5 countries, so we've identified 5 countries, the largest increase was seen in Angola. Let's have a look at another sentence structure. The other African country in the sample, Nigeria, also experienced an increase in population, albeit not as great as Angola's, 28% compared to 43%. Okay, so here we've identified that Angola and Nigeria are African countries, and that's a good way for us to group those two countries together. And using a sentence structure like this, we're likely to get a very high score. Let's have a look at a few more. Pakistan experienced the third largest growth over the period at 21%. Okay, so this sentence is using a superlative. We're saying it's the third largest growth. And we're not just saying that it experienced growth, we're saying it's the third largest growth. These subtle differences in comparing Pakistan to other countries is what it gets us a high score in IELTS writing. More examples. Russia was the only country that registered the same number of inhabitants in 2008 and 2018. So we've got was the only country. Again, we're comparing Russia to all of our sample countries. Okay, and then we also get a high score for using words like inhabitants. So a synonym for citizens or people of a country. Okay, another one. Both Romania and Japan experienced a decline in their population figures. So again, we're grouping Romania and Japan, and we're saying that these countries are grouped because they decreased in population between 2008 and 2018. Okay, these are good sentence structures to practice in your practice writing in your practice essays and answers before you go to do the exam. Let's have a look at a few more. The greatest decrease was observed in Romania, which saw a 5% decrease between 2008 and 2018 from 20 to 19 million. So again, we've got a superlative. The greatest decrease was observed in Romania. Okay, so the last tip that we're going to look at is to learn the most common words plus their synonyms for task 1. So the most common words are words like increase, decrease, remain the same, moderate, significant, approximately, reaches the highest point. So these are words that you 100% should learn before you go to do your task 1 or before you go to do your IELTS writing. Now, a good idea is to learn synonyms for these words. So for example, for increase, we can say rise or climb. For decrease, we can say fall, decline, drop, reduce. For remain the same, we can say plateau, levels out, remain steady, remains constant. For moderate, we can say modest. Instead of saying significant, which means a large increase or a large decrease, we can say words like substantial, marked, steep, sizable, noticeable. For approximately, which is when we're giving the data but we're saying it's not exactly a certain number, it's approximately a certain number. We can use words like roughly, around, about, just above or just below. And finally, to say something reaches the highest point. So for example, if you have a line graph and it reaches the highest point, we can say words like reaches the highest level or reaches the peak. Okay guys, now before you write your task 1 answer, have a look below this video and complete some of the quizzes that I provided for you. Best of luck with your studies, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next lesson. Bye then.